Hello, you guys, Luxura Moon Goddess, and today for Real Talk Friday, we are going to be discussing life is so much better once you're out of school. So, that is what I'm going to be speaking on today. Let's jump right into it. So, with that being said, and I've been thinking about this kind of recently, and it's like once you're done with school, life is just so much better. It's like I haven't been in. It's been a little over 10 years since I was in high school. Probably about 8 years since I've been in college, and life is just so much better. It's like you spend all those years in school, and growing up when I was little or when I was younger, I never really liked school that much. I'm going to be honest. I just never liked school. I really wasn't super popular or anything at school. And plus some of the teachers I had really weren't that great. And so, with schools in general, especially in the U.S., it's like we really do need something to be done about the school system in general. But I guess it just depends on what school you go to. I never liked school. It wasn't enjoyable to me because growing up, especially with my parents, they were very heavily focused on grades, get good grades. Not that I even had issues like getting good grades in school, but they were just hard on grades, and it was just not a good experience for me. It really wasn't. I guess if I had to pick the best years that I had, it was probably in middle school. It wasn't even high school, and the high school I went to was a hot mess anyway. But talking too much on the school side, let's talk about the part where you're out of school. When you are just done with school, it's like your adult life truly does begin once you're out of school. It's like you don't have to report to these classes, you don't have to listen to these long lessons, and it's like once you're out of school and you're an adult, it's like you have much more freedom. I think for me, when I was thinking about it the other day, it's like, I was just out shopping, having fun, being out and about, and it's like you have all of this freedom once you're not tied up with school. Yes, you get tied up with, you have to start working, you have a job. But even with that being said, you get paid on a job. You're not getting paid to go to school, unless you got maybe a scholarship. Oh, no, that's not getting paid, excuse me. But anyway, you're not getting paid to go to those classes and stuff. It's like you have all of this freedom as an adult, and you can do what you want, you can wear what you want, you can choose. Technically, even when you start a job, you can choose, because you don't necessarily have to go to work, but that's for another story. You can choose to call out and not go to that job if you want to, if needed. I'm not going to judge you if you have, because let's be real, I've called out a couple times on a job because I just didn't want to report to it. It's like you have so much more freedom and control once you're out of school. It's like, and when I was younger, I was always looking forward to being done with school. It's like, oh my goodness, I don't want to go to school. Like, I really didn't even want to go to college, if I'm being honest. But I went. I just got an associate's degree because it was just like, let me just get that at the very least. And so, but I'm just so glad. Like, you guys, you can't even tell. I'm so glad that I'm done with school. It's like, when I think the thing when I was younger, it was like I felt like my life was just about school. It's like, oh, focus on school, get good grades. You need to socialize with all these other kids. You need to, participate in these activities and stay after school. It's like I already don't even want to be in the school, let alone talking to some of these kids who I'm not going to probably remember once I graduate, or outside of my friends, and going to these classes, learning about these things that information that I'm not even going to use. It's like, let me be done with school. And once I finally did start working, and once I was done with school, I was just so happy. Like, I was just so happy. It's like, oh my goodness, you spend how many years combined? Like all the way through K to 12. So that's 13 years. Plus, if you go to college, most people get a bachelor's degree. That's 4 more years. That's 17 years of school of your life. That's nearly 2 decades of your life that you're spending in school, in an institution. I'm so glad to be free. It's like I'm free as a bird, and even though my life, life isn't perfect. My life isn't necessarily 100% perfect, but it's going pretty damn well, if I say so myself. It's like, even though I found another job, I'm working part time, but I still have free time to do the things that I want to do. Driving around, traveling, shopping, going out to different places. Watching my favorite shows. You're just the free time and the freedom that you have as a child. So if you're somebody younger, you just have to hang in there because, and the thing is like people make it seem like, oh, school, 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 and it's like, especially when you're like a teenager, your life revolves around school and pretty much nothing else. And it's like, and they make it seem like the way that school is set up, the way they're so focused on school, it's almost like you think that it's never going to end. It's like all this talk about school, life focusing on school. Once you graduate and you're really out in the real world with other adults, most of them who will be older than you, nobody's really talking about school like that. Unless they're stuck, unless they're one of those people that, peaked in high school, or peaked in high school and they didn't really amount to anything in life, they're still stuck on school because that's all they had. It's like if you're the athlete on the football team, captain of the team, or whatever the hell, and they're probably still stuck on school. They're probably still curious about other people from their high school or whatever. Me, I could care less about people from high school. I probably don't, I don't really remember a lot of people, if I'm being honest, which is a good thing because most of those people I wanted to forget anyway. So, and even with that being said, most adults aren't really talking about school in general like that anyway. I mean, unless you ask them, but most people aren't walking around, oh, what were you like in high school, and or what was your favorite subject in school, and oh, in school, I was the cheerleader, and nobody's once you graduate, once you're out of school, nobody's talking about fucking school. Excuse my French. Nobody's talking about school like that because the school life has ended. It's ended. You've graduated. And once you graduate, you move forward. You have to move forward. You don't want to stay stuck focusing, thinking about school, thinking about how you peaked. I mean, you may have, a couple of good memories, even though I really didn't like school that much. I had a few good memories or whatever. But even then, I don't want to be thinking about school because it's like, once, especially when I got a couple years out of college and I was working on a job, it's like, first of all, it's kind of like how I don't really believe, my job, my work defines me. School, I realize school does not define me. The student that I was in school, even though, I was a good student, got good grades, whatever, and some may call it a nerd. It's like, no, I wasn't a nerd. I was getting those good grades so my parents would not be coming at me sideways. But with that being said, it's like my life, school is not my life. School does not define me. These grades, they make it seem like, especially in the type of school district that I was growing up in, all your grades, your grades dictate your life and the type of job that you get in. If you don't make good grades, you're not going to get into a good college, you're not going to get a good job. And we know, especially people my age, it's a lie now because there's plenty of people, it's kind of like they say this, the C students manage the A students. And a lot of people are walking around with bachelor's degrees and they're stuck in retail jobs or stuck in jobs that not even in their career path, not even a part of their degree. And so it's like you did all this work, you did all this stressing out for these grades, get these grades, get this grades, go to this college, and you can't even get a job anyway. And I can honestly say, because I'm not looking for, and it sounds bad, but I don't really care. I already know I'm not going to really have a career path like most people. And at some point, I'm going to figure out how to stop working anyway. But with that being said, you know, don't let it define you. It's like school does not define you. Who you were in high school, that's not who you are today. It's certainly not who I am today because I've grown so much since high school. I've evolved so much past high school. And for reference, I'm 28 years old. I'm going to be 29 next week. I'm not even the same person that I was in high school. When I was like in high school, when I was younger, I was more shy. I was more timid. I was not someone who would like to socialize. I was very, more self-centered. I still am very self-centered, but you can see, if I was still the person who I was in high school, I wouldn't even be on YouTube right now. Like, I wouldn't even be talking in this video because, like, I would be too shy. I'd probably, fumble my words, worried about, oh, what do I say? What if I mess up? But it's like, you evolve. You move forward. You get more mature. You evolve and you become better. You improve. So even aside from life getting so much better once you've moved out of school, once you're finished with schooling, high school, college, it's like you as an actual person, you also evolve. You also get so much better. If you're doing it, if you're living correctly, you're going to evolve, you're going to improve, you're going to get so much better than how you were when you were younger. So even with that being said, it's like, don't get caught up, especially if you're somebody who you weren't super popular or, people bullied you or, stuff like that. Don't don't let it get to you unless you're around like super small-minded people who's probably still hanging out with their friends with high school. Nobody cares. Most actual adults, they don't care because you're not still talking about school anymore, and I think that's the beauty of at least where I've lived, the places that I've lived, nobody's really talking about school like that. They're not talking about school. They're not asking you, what high school did you go to? What college did you go to? The people I'm around, they're not talking about that shit. They're not talking about it because they don't care. So if you're one of those people, you're worried about, what high school you go to. I mean, yeah, enjoy your school years or whatever. Do what you have to do. But at some point, you're gonna realize, once you're out of school, once you're a little bit older, it's not even gonna matter anymore. Like, it's not even gonna matter anymore. And especially if, like, what I wish, what I know now, I wish when, especially in like high school, because I was really worried about grades and stuff, and they're really hard about, oh, you need to be mindful of the college that you go to, you need to do well, these are the 4 years of your life that matter. I wish I didn't really focus on grades that much. I was kind of like the mindset I had with school was like is the mindset I have with work. It's like, get in and get out. Like, I didn't want to really socialize with people like that. I had friends that I made from like middle school that I would still talk to. I didn't really want to socialize. I didn't want to do extra activities because it's like I have to go home and do all this homework anyway. I don't want to stay after school and do extracurricular activities. I have enough on my plate. If looking back now, what I would do differently, I would probably try to do a little bit more socializing. But I would see it more as like a social game. Like, I would treat it more like networking. I'd be trying to see if I can associate with certain people for like benefits or whatever. I know that sounds sociopathic, but I don't care. That's what I would probably do, and I probably just wouldn't care too much about my grades. If you get a C or whatever, you get a C. Hell, if you get an F on one thing, you get an F. If you get a zero, you didn't because you didn't turn in an assignment. So what? You got a zero. It's not going to ruin your life. They make it seem like, depending on the type of school system you went to, they make it seem like, oh, it's going to ruin your life, it's going to ruin your life. It's not going to ruin your life. It's not going to dictate your whole life story. Because there's more to your life story than, oh, I was an honor roll student. Oh, I was a valedictorian. Oh, I was the football captain, quarterback of my team. Oh, I was like the hot cheerleader on the pep squad or whatever. There's more than life to that. There's more than life to that. And most people, the type of person you were in high school, it doesn't mean you're gonna stay that person the rest of your life. You're going to grow. You're going to evolve. You're going to get better. And you're not going to remain the same person anyway. And if you think about it, especially like some of these people, some of like the bullies or whatever in high school that, think they're really hot, they're attractive or whatever. Do you know that a lot of times those people, like a couple years, down the line, they're probably going to gain some weight. Some of them chicks are going to have like baby daddies or whatever, paying child support. Some of those people that y'all worried about, that think there's the popular kids, they're not, they may be popular in high school, but they're probably not going to be popular within their social life, 10, 20 years down the line. So if you're still worried about or still mad at people from high school, just know they may be popular now, but they're not going to really be that popular 10, 20 years down the line. And even if they are, so what? Who cares? You don't need to be fixated with them anymore. You haven't even seen them in 10 and 20 years. You don't need to be fixated with those people anymore. They're not thinking of you. They probably don't remember your name. Who cares? You don't have to be fixated with them anymore. And, if you're around people who's very small minded, probably in small towns, they may fixate, on what school you go to. I don't really know too much about how that works in small towns. But for the most part, like I said, once you grow up, once you're around actual other adults, they're not still talking about school. They're not still talking about school. It doesn't really matter. And so, like I said, depending on what type of school district you're in, I went to CMS Schools of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I could do a whole video on CMS. If you're somebody who went to CMS, hello fellow CMSers. But the CMS was kind of a mess, and so again, depending on the type of school district you went to, depending on what they say, they're going to make it seem like it dictates your whole life. It really doesn't. It's not going to dictate your life. Those grades aren't going to dictate your life. We have people who drop out of college, and it's like, we have people that drop out of college, they become super successful, and we have people who were honor roll students, stuck at dead end jobs, stuck in retail jobs, or this, that, and the other. So please don't get caught up. They make it seem like, oh, you must get good grades. You must get into a really stellar college. You must have this stellar grades. Stellar. Don't let it. Don't focus heavily on it, because it's not even guaranteed. Even if you do well in school, even if you get that diploma, even if you get that degree, it's not necessarily guaranteed that you're going to get the job of your dreams, or it's going to be an easy path to success, because it's not as clear cut as they make it seem. So, excuse me. So, with that being said, don't stress out about school. If once you're out of school, or if you're out of school like me, enjoy your life and continue to grow and evolve as a person. So, that is all I have for this one, and I will check you guys later in the next one. Bye bye.